from the time she was a nominated member of parliament in Nairobi, and now that she represents a constituency in Nairobi. And you know, when you get a lady being elected in a constituency member, and especially in a volatile constituency like Dagoretti North, you must give respect to that kind of honorable member being elected in a constituency like that. And she will tell you she has never benefited from even a shilling in her time as a member of parliament, despite the fact that she may have to do more trips to her constituency and back from parliament. Within a day or within a week, she does more trips and covered more mileage than a member like our former Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Farah, who will probably go to his constituency once every weekend, travel for 300 kilometers to and fro, but that is the 30 kilometers the Honorable Beatrice will do 5 times probably in a day. It is possible for the member for Dagoretti North to be in her office at 7 a.m. At 8:30, she is in her constituency. 9:30, when the house is rising, she is here. At 11, she goes back to her constituency office, comes back to the house, and the same in the afternoon. And therefore, she also warrants to get some mileage. But we have never gotten, we have never had it to be an issue. But those who benefit, you will appreciate the work that the Parliamentary Service Commission does and why there is need now to align the Parliamentary Service Act with those functions of ensuring that they are taking care of your well-being as members, and also staff, our staff who are doing a very good job for us, so that all their welfare matters and well-being are catered for by the Parliamentary Service Commission and not any other body out there. And you know what I mean. And if you don't know, please know it is any other body out there. And I have not mentioned any other body. I have just said it is important that just like the Judicial Service Commission deals with judicial officers in the judiciary, this parliament is an independent arm of government, just like the judiciary is an independent arm of government. And therefore, we must not be treated any differently. If the Judicial Service Commission takes care of the well-being of the members of the judiciary and their staff, we also need to align our Parliamentary Service Act so that our own commission takes care of your well-being. And you need not have any apologies having a commission to take care of your well-being, even those who benefit from mileage. You benefit from mileage because of the distance you come from in your constituencies. And you know, somebody who is traveling from Tiati, like the women rep for Baringo County, when she moves from Tiati, close to 800 kilometers away from the CBD, I must appreciate what she has to go through as compared to me, who will move a mere 15 kilometers to Kikuyu and back. The farthest corner of my constituency, I think, is about 40 kilometers from here. The farthest corner where I border with Kajiado County and part of one tip of Narok County. But Honorable Speaker, you know, even as we engage in other debates, including the one man, one woman, one vote, we must be cognizant of the kind of country that we all live in and appreciate each other as Kenyans. It is God who placed us in our various destinations where we call home. And nothing makes the Honorable Farah or the Honorable Lesuda not come to live in Kikuyu. Today I represent a constituency just outside Nairobi. And because of the proximity to Nairobi, we are hosting Kenyans from all walks of life, from Garissa, from Mandera, some from Tiati, some from Western Kenya, some from the far north, as far as Marsabit County. And they are Kenyans who have every right to live in Kikuyu and in Kiambu. Honorable Speaker, I was telling somebody yesterday, in another 20 years or 10 years from today, I may not be a member of parliament for Kikuyu. I do not know who will be the member of parliament for Kikuyu. But any child who has grown up in Kikuyu and knows Kikuyu, irrespective of where they come from, can be elected as a member of parliament in Kikuyu. I will not be surprised, Honorable Speaker, if at one time the governor position in Kiambu goes to somebody who does not originally hail from Kiambu. That is the beauty for democracy, and that is the kind of country we want to build. Today, we have elected a president who many believed that there are communities that would never vote for a president from the Rift Valley. But we elected a president on the basis of what he espoused, what he stood for, not on the basis of where he came from. That is why, Honorable Speaker, elsewhere we have taken time, painfully, to stand for what is right, not what is politically expedient and what you think is politically popular in your village, but what is right and good for Kenya. I said yesterday, Honorable Speaker, Kenya is now playing at a global stage. We are globalizing our country. We cannot afford to dwell on village matters now. We cannot villagize, if there is such a word as villagizing. If there is globalizing, please let us not villagize our country. We have a beautiful country. Yes. A beautiful country that we cannot afford to villagize. Yes. A beautiful country where our president has placed on a global stage. Yes. And it is that globalization that we should be focusing on, not villagizing a beautiful country like Kenya. And I want to plead with all of you as members of parliament, please, as you are told by the president on Madaraka Day, you are bestowed with a very dignified position as members of the National Assembly of Kenya. National Assembly, that's why you're called MNAs, members of the National Assembly. Not members of some village assemblies, not members of your county assemblies. You are members of the national assemblies to espouse that what is of national good and the greater public good in the nation of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, because I can see I'm short of time, let me just close by saying that there is a famous saying, which I could quote, that says you can't build a kingdom with someone who still wants the attention from the village. We will not build our nation if we still want attention from our villages. Let us build a nation where we need and seek attention of the nation of Kenya, not the attention of your villagers. With that, I second.
Thank you. So, the Honorable Ichugwa, did I hear you say 1 man, 1 woman, or 1 man, 1 shilling? What did you say? 1 man, 1 woman? 1 man, 1 woman. Not 1 shilling.
Honorable Speaker, I think I said 1 man,
1 woman,
1 woman, because you know I am a man of a Christian faith. I am married to a beautiful lady from Nyeri County, and you know what they say of our beautiful ladies from Nyeri County. And therefore have to keep re-emphasizing 1 man, 1 woman, 1 vote.
Thank you. Okay. Honorable members, I want to propose the question that the statute law, Miscellaneous Amendment Bill number 67, National Assembly of 2023, be now read a second time. And before I give the first person on this, members, join me in welcoming students from Iriani Secondary School, Tharaka constituency, Tharaka Nithi, who was in public gallery to follow proceedings this morning. And in that regard, I'll give the first bite on this to the honorable member for Tharaka, the Honorable Gitonga Murugara.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to do 2 things. The first one is to welcome the children of Iriani Secondary School from my constituency to this noble house of the National Assembly to observe the proceedings. Iriani Secondary School is one of the best schools from my constituency, Tharaka, and my county, Tharaka Nithi. They are actually performers, both in education and sports, and their numbers too are actually some of the best in the constituency. Young people from Iriani Secondary School, welcome here. See what these honorable members of parliament do. See what your parents elected us to do. And I encourage you to study hard. That one day you will also sit here to represent the great constituency of Tharaka and also to represent your county, Tharaka Nithi. Karibuni sana, observe what we do. I hope my time is not running out. I now rise to support the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendments Bill, Bill number 67 of 2023, and make the following quick remarks as I support the proposals to amend the Children's Act, the Copyright Act, which is very important in that it tries to recognize the work being done by our musicians. We have these young people who are actually out there producing music and recording, and when it comes to receiving royalties, they are not being properly paid. This act goes in to give a formula on how these young men and young ladies are to be paid in terms of royalties. I also wish to comment on the proposal to amend the Scrap Metal Act. This is an act that deals with waste metal, scrap metal, quite a valuable commodity in the country because some small-scale industries rely on scrap metal to produce goods to be sold. And we know very well that unless this industry is regulated, there is a lot of danger in people going out there to vandalize any metal they come across, anything they come across which is metallic, and sell it as scrap metal. So it is important that we are meant to protect what we do. We have a proposal to amend the National Employment Authority, and many of us here may not know that such an authority exists. This is the authority that regulates employment in the country. And the emphasis being laid here is to ensure that Kenyans actually get employed in all these entities that are employers under FKE and other organizations. We also have proposals to amend the Fisheries Management and Development Act, the Energy Act, and here I urge you to read the Memorandum of Objects in respect of this bill. You will see what proposals are being made. There are also proposals to amend the public-private partnerships, a very important entity which under this law we are able to work both the private and the public in partnership to ensure that our country moves forward, our country develops. It is some of these public-private partnerships that we have today which we are looking on to ensure that what we require to do is actually achieved. I have in my constituency what is called the Grand High Force Dam, Kiboka Dam, which has to come under public-private partnership so that this country is able to generate more energy, is able to get more water for irrigation under such a scheme. And finally, we have the proposal to amend the Parliamentary Service Act together with the Judicial Service Act in a manner that is similar. The manner is similar in that these are two independent institutions. The House of Parliament itself, the Parliament is independent as the second arm of government, while the judiciary is independent as the third arm of government. Both of them have independent commissions that take care of these particular institutions, and the introduction being proposed here is to ensure that these commissions are able to take care of members' welfare. Members' welfare includes members of parliament who actually do a great service to this country. Some have to travel long distances from their constituencies to the Central House of Parliament here in Nairobi, as a result of which they suffer great hardships. They may not know where to sleep, they do not know where to put up, Possibly they also do not know where to spend in the evenings. This is why the Parliamentary Service Commission comes in and is now being empowered to ensure that away from other bodies, it is able to take care of the members' welfare. And this is very important. And the same applies to the judges and the members of judiciary. As much as we also talk about parliamentary staff, that Judicial Service Commission is able to take care of judges while they are discharging their duties. It is able to take care of members of staff while they are discharging their duties, away from interference in the courts from other bodies. These are very important laws which we need to support, which we need to actually agree that we effect the amendments, and those affected are able to benefit from what we are now propagating in these laws. So with those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I do support the proposed amendments and urge this House to support the bill. We pass it and we are able to implement it to the betterment of the House of Parliament and the betterment of the judiciary, which is the third arm of government. Mr. Speaker, sir, I do support.
Thank you. Member for Dadaab.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to support the bill, the 30th Miscellaneous Law Amendment Bill. Mr. Speaker, we have critical infrastructures in this country. And one of the biggest problems that's been happening right now is the vandalization of some of those critical infrastructures like transformers. It doesn't cost much for any organization to put up the right cameras wherever you have a transformer. So that, and we already have a unit in the police force which is supposed to protect critical infrastructures, such as this. Mr. Speaker, we cannot continue having some small cartels who specialize in sending young boys to go out there and vandalize such infrastructures and then bring those things as scraps to them for them to sell to the international market. Copper, transformers, all these things. So the actual exportation itself of scrap metals should be banned in the country. We need to ban it. We are a country that wants to industrialize. We can recycle that iron ore, or what do you call the metals that are there, and use them ourselves to add value to our industrial sector. So when I hear, and then the penalties have got to be not only for the young boys who go and steal these things to go and take it to a big person at the other end. Usually, handling stolen property should carry more severe penalty than the actual stealing itself. But the people who are actually encouraging this business are people who are businessmen themselves and largely would want to export these things outside the country. They pull it together, they aggregate it, consolidate it, and then sell it to either a Chinese or God knows somebody else who's going to send it out of the country. Mr. Speaker, you cannot fight the symptoms of a disease. You go and attack the vector itself. So what we need to do, and I think any developing country, any country that's worth its own salt, that wants to seriously develop, cannot develop without having an industrial takeoff. And you cannot now have an industrial takeoff if you don't protect your iron, your metals. We have to protect those metals. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, we're already talking of having power outages and sometimes not getting our electricity because of this kind of thuggery and burglary or the stealing of these things. The famous princess, when we had the French Revolution, said, if they don't have, if there's no bread, why not eat cake? For somebody now from other parts of the country other than northern Kenya, the adage befits very well the state we're in. We don't have the national grid in the whole region. The only places we have the national grid is up to Isiolo, a little bit past Isiolo, And on the other hand, we have it only up to Garissa. And beyond Garissa, we don't have the national grid. We don't have electricity. We don't have connections. All these things that we talk about, the last mile connections and all those things, are basically news and music to our children, and our students, and our mothers and fathers, and young mothers and fathers. So it's important also, while we are talking about these things, to understand the need to take this development to the four corners of this country. And the only way to take it to the four corners of this country is to disabuse, Mr. Speaker, is to disabuse this very village concept of trying to reduce this country into villagization of politics. Politicization of every small thing. Mr. Speaker, when I was in the 10th Parliament, we passed what was called the Equalization Fund. The principle and the idea behind the Equalization Fund was that those all the northern frontier districts and the contiguous districts who were a buffer zone for the center, who were left out of development right from the colonial days up to the time when we got independence. And after we got independence, then we had the sessional paper number 10 to continue that institutional marginalization of those areas. And we've had, at the time we were passing our own Constitution 2010, we had all those years, from the time we became a colony and protectorate of Kenya, up to the time we got independence, and up to the time we had 30 years later, over 100 years of systematic government, institutional marginalization of those areas. In the shortest possible time, to begin with, we ended up with a very small amount, 0.5% of the annual revenue. 0.5% for all those 14 counties, 16 counties that had, or 14 counties that were essentially under that. Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, Lamu, all the way up to Isiolo, Marsabit, Turkana. I mean, those were the original things, but then this were expanded now to call it the ASAL areas. Areas that did not suffer the way we suffered ourselves over that period of time. So it was watered down. It was going to have very little effect. And then we went further and said that we are going to look for marginalized pockets in the rest of the country. Kenny, you get my point. Even in the major urban centers, we were looking for that. The idea is very simple. It's a way of trying to make sure that this country does not remain a united Kenya republic with one nation and one people called Kenyans. Nobody is going to accept to become a second-class citizen in his own country or a third-class citizen. These are recipes of a period of time for revolutions. For revolutions. So when I see today people talking about 1 mile, 1 vote, 1 man, 1 woman, 1 vote, absolute nonsense. You can't get any more dimwit than to advocate for such petty, base, literally, and frankly, things that you would never want to be associated with as a nationalist. And then somebody like that would want to become a president in this country. You think you're going to become a president and people are going to allow you to come and run the country and you take them like they're your slaves or part of your colony? No, they will revolt against you and there will be a revolution in the country. There were going to be civil wars. It's a recipe for a conflict. And when that happens, there is no guarantee who is going to remain in the country, by the way. In Rwanda, similar things happened. When the ethnicity of every Rwandan had to be put onto their ID cards where they were called Tutsi, Hutu. And the Tutsis were only 15%. They endured marginalization. They endured victimization from the time we got independence from the Belgians until 1994, including pogroms, including trying to wipe them out from the face of the earth and calling them cockroaches. What eventually happened? They fought their way through. They kicked out the oppressors from the country, and that 15% has had the reins of this kind of Rwanda from 1994 until today. If you read the history of Uganda, a country like Uganda, and you see the kind of things that used to be done to the Banyankole, the Bahima, the Bachiga, those people of the West, the Batoro, because the conflict used to be between the northerners and the center, the Baganda, and what you call the northerners who are basically Nilotics. Whether it was the Kabaka side or it was Milton Obote, Brigadier General Okero, Tito, and all those ones. But eventually, when they could not endure, somebody from the north comes in, he gives them hell. Somebody from the other side comes in, he gives them hell. Basically, they were the punching bag for everybody. Now, in a sense, the minorities in this country cannot accept to become a punching bag for anybody, regardless of whether you consider yourself a majority or not. Mr. Speaker, can I beg you to just give me a few more minutes, like 5 minutes?
You'll have 2.
I have 3. No, thank you.
I said you'll have 2.
Mr. Speaker, and it's precisely in line with that. Let's read history. If you think you can enjoy life, you can have tarmac roads everywhere, you can have water everywhere, and the others are going to live like they are in, the Red Indians of the olden days. You know what I mean? And the Maasais are still going to be all their lives in shukas, and basically, they're there as a tourist attraction, nothing more. And you don't think that they're any more equal to you, then it doesn't work, Mr. Speaker. It creates that kind of a revolution. And the country will go to hell. So we are lucky we have not had a violent conflict or a civil war in this country. The day it happens, we've had it all around us. We've had it in Uganda, it's there in Sudan, it was there in South Sudan, it was there in Somalia, it's now happening in Ethiopia in a manner you cannot imagine. It's happened everywhere except Tanzania. The only neighbor that has not gone through that is Tanzania. Why? Tanzanians. You look at the history of that country. The first leader of Tanzania was a Zanaki. The people are no more than 100,000 population. The second leader, Mkapa, Nyerere was that, comes from a small minority in the south. The third leader, remind me the name, was also coming from he comes from Bagamoyo, he's a Kikwete, Jakaya Kikwete. He's a Mkwere. The Kwere is about 30,000. Suluhu, as we have right now, you can imagine. Magufuli from small, you can only have a nation. The only guarantee for the future stability and existence of a country called Kenya is that kind of politics. Is that kind of politics. Not the politics in which you say, I'm going to use the impurity of my own, what they call numbers, tyranny of numbers, to suppress everybody else. 1 minute, Sika, any chance?
You're going to need 30 or 1 hour? Okay.
Okay, thank you. You can't have that. You can't have that. Because these are men. A man, I am a man. Man is a mankind. I'm not talking, I'm a man, I'm a woman. That's what the African Americans were fighting for when they were going for emancipation way back in the South. They just said, I am a man. If you remember in Selma, Montgomery, and all that. Now, for you to think that any community is any less worth than you, and we all came from colonialism, we came from all that slavery and everything else, we should know better than that. We should know better than that, because a small minority whites colonized us for 70 years and subjugated us. You get my point? They were removed, both by our own efforts and the global effort itself. Let's unite this country by having fairness, equity, equality, more than anything else, equity. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member for Jororok.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I rise to support the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendment Bill of 2023. Mr. Speaker, I want to go straight to the specific acts. And number 1 is the National Employment Authority. Mr. Speaker, we've had an authority which has not been able to recruit a substantive CEO due to difficulties in the Act, where we are saying the CEO must be below that 5 years. But again, we are saying the same CEO must have an experience of 5 years in management level. Mr. Speaker, this could not be possible, and therefore I support the amendment towards removal of the section that is talking of below 35 years for the CEO. Mr. Speaker, I also support the removal of the wording youth in the Act, because we know that we have so many job seekers who are above 35, but they are yet to be in any meaningful job. Mr. Speaker, on the Children Act, I support the removal of the word. Before the Children Act, Mr. Speaker, let me go to the Energy Act, and where I support the issue of including Kenya Power into the membership of Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy Act. And this will ensure that we have seamless working relationship between REREC and KPLC. And this will enhance electrification in our constituencies. Mr. Speaker, we've had a situation where REREC does its work, but the metering work, which is done by KPLC, takes so long because there is no seamless working relationship between REREC and Kenya Power. Mr. Speaker, on the Children Act, I support the issue of granting male applicants the right to adopt a child. Mr. Speaker, the Act as it was, the Children Act, I would consider it discriminating, because there's no way you can discriminate a male applicant from adoption of the child. And we know the principle, the guiding principle in terms of adoption of the child is the best interest of the child. We have some instances where the best interest of the child is on the male applicant. Mr. Speaker, finally, on the issue of the independence of the Parliamentary Service Commission and Judicial Service Commission is important. Mr. Speaker, this House has supported independent offices before. In the last financial year, this House passed a resolution that the Auditor General will have a one-line budget. And this was meant to empower the Office of the Independent General, the Office of Auditor General, in undertaking his or her work. Same case should apply to the Judicial Service Commission and the Parliamentary Service Commission, which are independent offices. There's no way, Mr. Speaker, you would have a commission and then again you purport to regulate the sittings of Parliament, assuming that this Parliament is undertaking an investigation of something, and then you purport to control the number of sittings. Mr. Speaker, that amounts to interference of the independence of the independent institution, and therefore I support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member for Dagoretti North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support the miscellaneous amendment bill, a bill of 2023, Mr. Speaker. And as I start, Mr. Speaker, let me just start with the objects of the bill and just say that while we appreciate that sometimes we carry miscellaneous bills, it is also important for us, and I know it's important for all of us members, to try and just look at the main act so that you find yourself when you are speaking on a bill, it's very clear. I'll start with the Children's Act, Act 2022, which the bill proposes to amend and now to remove the provisions which prohibit the court from granting a sole male applicant adoption of a child. And Mr. Speaker, in this country, a few years ago, not just a few years, a family has gone through the worst for the last 20 years. They went through a case that was very sad, through the High Court to even our Supreme Court at that time. This was a child who was born by a mother who was a Kenyan and a child who was born by a father who was of a British citizen. And when they had issues, Mr. Speaker, they had to live with the child when he was 7 years. This girl has followed her child. It is just recently the UK government, through the courts, decided now when the child is going to 20 years is when he has now been granted, the mother has been granted to see his child. And so these are some of the things that we are saying the Children's Act is going to support, not just that one Kenyan woman, but I know we have very many other Kenyan women who are going through the same challenges, even abroad, Mr. Speaker. You're told you can't even bring your child to Kenya because you have to, and you remember there was a time in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, we were to pass a treaty so that we help in. And I know we rejected it, but it is something we need to look at. So as we even look at the proposed amendments, we have to ask ourselves, I know there are challenges when we adopt children. They go through a lot of anxiety. They also find themselves in capability with their families they have gone in, and many other things. So it's something we have to look at both sides and see that when we are agreeing on it, that we are able to ensure that child also goes to a foster home that is a home for them. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of scrap metal, where we amend, and I want to agree with the Honorable Farah. Today, when you look at all our streets, Mr. Speaker, trust me, they've already taken everything that was done on the ring roads. All the metals have been taken because people know where to sell them. The whole of Ngong Road, they have cut. The whole of Olongurueni Road, every metal is gone. And we are saying, these companies that we are now again seeking, among other things, to provide issuance of license to persons dealing in copper, they are the ones who are now bringing the challenges we have, because they are the ones you find in a whole estate, a whole place is full of scrap metal. But you're wondering, how do you deal with this? While we are talking about climate change, where we are talking about pollution, where we are talking about how do you deal with such environment, we are still encouraging the same. This one of licenses, Mr. Speaker,